Hello, this is Bill Hahn. Welcome to the IBM BPM tutorial demo series. In this scenario, we'll be using the order fulfillment process application to give you a tour of the process designer. You can see in the authoring environment we have a BPMN, Business Process Modeling Notation palette, on the right hand side. It has elements like activities, swim lanes, decision gateways. We can drag and drop these elements easily onto the visual canvas in the middle and draw a picture of the process. We'll name this first activity Activity 1, 2, 3. We'll drag and drop the decision gateway beside it, and we'll give that a name as well. We'll call that Additional Fulfillment Options. To give you an idea of how we configure the behavior of this process application without having to write code, we'll connect this up and then we'll visit the property sheet. You notice that the property sheet for Activity 1, 2, 3 has a default due date of 1 hour. We can set that to minutes, hours, or days. We can also make that fully dynamic by simply choosing from the list of process data the payload of the process and make it dynamic at runtime. For instance, if some of these orders were for platinum customers as opposed to gold or silver, that might influence the due date. If it was a particularly large order, we might choose to make the due date dynamic based upon the data that's flowing through the process at runtime. So we can make this very dynamic just by visiting the property sheets. To give you another example, you can see here that the routing property sheet for this activity, which is in the vendor swim lane, is currently set to lane participant. So that means that anybody in this group of vendors, let's say that we have 10 people on our team and we have 100 orders going through this system, all 10 people would get 100 activities in their inbox for each activity in the process diagram. What if we want the same user that works on a particular order to work on every activity for that specific order? We could switch this to lane participant, and now let's say Bob the vendor who's working on this activity later in the process would get this activity in his inbox. So therefore we would have some sort of contextual continuity, I guess you could say. Bob would be able to manage an order from start to finish for any activity that he's responsible for as a vendor. Now let's say that we had 100 orders and 10 people on our team, and instead of having all 100 orders show up in everyone's inbox, we wanted to spread that across the team. If we choose load balancing or round robin algorithms, that would mean now that each of the 10 people on the team would have 10 orders in their inbox, so we can more evenly distribute the work across the team, assuming that the orders were processed at approximately the same rate. You get the point. We can balance the work across the team. On the left side of the authoring environment, we have an organization of a process library. And the spirit of this process library organization is to be as easy to navigate as, say, iTunes. With iTunes, you have categories of music, movies, TV shows. With the process library, you have a similarly easy to navigate set of categories. For business process applications, we have processes, user interfaces, integration implementation components, rules, data, performance. And in these categories, we can create and manage different artifact types. Integration services, web services, business rules, process rules. We have a variety of artifacts for performance, reports and scoreboards, and here's some examples of those where we have layouts and reports and timing intervals and so forth. There's also a category in the process library called Toolkits, and this is the name that we give to the category of reusable components. Really anything in the IT landscape, back-end systems, COBOL programs, web services, things in the .NET space, in the Java space, anything in the IT landscape can be called via open standards. And we can surface those IT systems and components, those integrations, in this Toolkits section. So for instance, let's say we have some reusable SOA services, some enterprise SOA services, like ESB integrations, business rules, back-end systems like SAP. we can surface those in this Toolkits section and then drag and drop them out into the process diagram and make it very easy to visually connect them into the business process. Let's say that we have an SAP orders update. We also have a iLog JRules business rule. You'll notice also that if we double click into this SAP orders update, there's layers of detail. In the case of this integration component, we connect to SAP. We have some database and warehouse interactions. We have a web service call, and then we update SAP based upon that activity. So let's go ahead and wire this into the process diagram. And then let's shift gears a little bit and create a new activity and do a little bit more implementation on it. Let's name this new activity the new first activity. Oh, by the way, we have, as another example of things that come along with the process, we have some default KPIs, key performance indicators, like execution time. We really end up tracking all of the activity in the process, as you'll see a little bit later. So for this first activity, let's name this new first activity. And this new first activity, we're going to make that just what it says, the new first activity, by dragging and dropping this connection from the create order activity to this new first activity. And we're doing this for several reasons. One is to make the point that the business process is always runnable. In Lombardi Edition, we have the ability to run the business process at any time. And we do that with the play button in the upper right hand corner. We call this the playback button because we're able to play back the process to the business and IT stakeholders that we're collaborating with at any time, and thereby get better collaboration and feedback as we rapidly, in an agile fashion, iteratively build this out. So let's go ahead and press that play button and see what happens. You can see that we switch from the designer view into the inspector perspective, which is the name we give that part of the tool, that perspective, where we can step through the process. So you can see it has created a new instance of the process, a new order that's flowing through the process. We're in the new first activity step, and it's visually highlighted below in the diagram. So now if we step through this activity, even though we've done nothing more than draw the picture of the process and drag this new activity out, we haven't done any work to implement what happens with this activity. We can still run this activity, we can claim it and step through it. And you notice that when we press that run button and step through the activity, that there's a default user interface for it. So regardless of how much or how little we implement in the application, it's always runnable. And that allows us the flexibility to focus on the piece of the process that's most important and highest priority with the business and IT stakeholders that we're working with at any given time. So it's always runnable, which is what we just did. And if we continue stepping through this, you can see that it's progressed to the next activity, the create order activity. This is an activity that we've built out a little bit more, so you can see that when I step through this and claim it, it has a more elaborate UI. So let's get a feeling for how that could be built out. But first, let's take a snapshot. Snapshots are a drop-dead easy way of versioning. It's so easy that people will actually use it. And that's a big benefit because it gives us, it enables us to more easily track our changes and manage change over time across both design time and runtime, as we'll see a little bit later. So let's call this first version or snapshot version 5.1 new activities. And you can see now that if I click on the previous snapshot before I started this work, that's what the diagram looked like. And now if we go to this latest snapshot or version, we can see that it includes, of course, all the work that we just did, the things that we drew on the diagram.